Hey everybody, we just would like to let you know we're officially now on iTunes, we're also on SoundCloud, and we're also on YouTube. You can look us up at Palm Beach County Young Dems or PBCYD. If you could leave us a rating or a review or comments about our interviews, it is greatly appreciated. Neera Tanden is the president of the largest liberal think tank in the United States. Center for American Progress, or CAP as it's known, formulates policies that are often adopted into the Democratic Party's platform. The process of crafting policy recommendations is facilitated by the collection of data from a myriad of sources, such as in-house polling, scientific reports, and academic research. I recently spoke with Neera about the arc of her career and the recent policy papers CAP has produced. So, what got you into politics?
It sounds hokey, but when I was growing up, my mother was forced to go on, my parents divorced and my father left, and my mother was forced to go on welfare, and we used, Section 8 housing, and I was a kid, I was like the only kid in my school who was using free and reduced lunch for a couple years there, and so, I really understood how public policy affects people. And, since from a pretty young age, I recognize that what happens in the government affects me and affects people like me. And so I thought, I've always been kind of captured and motivated by public policy and giving back and making sure kids like me have real opportunity in their lives.
So, you obviously have a law degree. What made you go into law?
It's interesting, from when I was a kid and, or more like when I was in high school, I really wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. I sort of saw that as a way to give back and, to address injustice. And so all throughout high school and college, I wanted to go to law school to be a civil rights lawyer. But then in 92, in the end of my senior year, I really got the political bug and worked on Clinton Gore campaign in California, and really thought much more about doing public policy. And I was very fortunate to get into Yale Law School, and that's a school that a lot of people who entered public life, Bill and Hillary Clinton, Jerry Brown, a lot of people, a lot of people in public life have gone to Yale. So I really loved Yale, but I actually have never practiced, actually practiced law since I graduated.
So you mentioned that you went to go ahead and work on Bill Clinton's campaign, the Clinton-Gore campaign, the first election. And obviously you were Hillary Clinton's policy director in her 2008 presidential run. What other campaigns have you worked on?
So all my campaigns, I worked on the 92 campaign as kind of a minion. In 1996, I worked on the California Clinton Gore campaign as the Issues and Press Secretary for California. In 2000, I was Hillary's Issues Director and then ultimately her Deputy Campaign Manager on her Senate run. And then when she ran for President in 2007, I was her Issues Director on the campaign and as a part of the executive leadership of the campaign. And then when she lost the primary, I worked for Barack Obama on his general election. I was the domestic policy director on that campaign. And then in 2016, I was an outside advisor to Hillary Clinton's campaign, and then ultimately on her transition.
When did you start working for Center for American Progress? Obviously, you're the president now, and you have a history of working there. When did you first start? How did you hear about Center for American Progress?
Oh, yeah. So, it's interesting. I had been talking with Hillary Clinton in the late 90s about the need for a progressive think tank that worked across issues. And John Podesta was starting he was working on starting the Center for American Progress, and Hillary and I had been talking about, and we were actually fundraising for something as well. And then we thought it made most sense to join efforts. So I was one of the first employees of the Center for American Progress as the Vice President for Domestic Policy. And then after about 8 months, Hillary asked me to be her legislative director, and I went back to work for her. But I've been here in several different roles and started really when CAP's doors opened.
So now that you're president of Center for American Progress, I assume that you direct resources on what policies should be looked into and researched, if I'm understanding that?
Yeah, I mean, we're a large organization. We have 330 people, roughly a $50 million budget. And, I'm in charge of the strategic direction of the institution. We have a lot of fantastic leaders of our teams, and they really develop the issues and policy agendas for their teams. But I address the strategic direction for the organization, and obviously have, direct resources in particular areas.
So, in June of 2016, one of the reports of many, obviously, that CAP releases was a report based on antitrust. And we've seen plenty of people in the sphere since then say that we need larger enforcement, like Austin Frerick, a former congressional candidate in Iowa who now works for open markets, and he's talked about agriculture monopolies. Do you see that taking more mainstream effect here?
Yeah, I think that there's a big, robust discussion about the role of antitrust, and I'm proud that Center for American Progress was part of lifting up those sets of issues. And there's a range of leaders. Obviously, Senator Warren, who's running for president, has talked a lot, has raised the issues of antitrust and monopolies and the interference with the impact that has on competition, but also the impact it has on wages and, basically monopolistic, or another way, just very companies that have large scale power in the market can also dictate lower wages for workers. And so we've done a lot of work on antitrust that also connects to wages and the kind of downward pressure on wages.
So one of the other big issues there's many issues, but I would say one of the top two issues that are discussed now are healthcare and climate change. And obviously, CAP released a paper on climate change and a carbon tax, but as we've seen a release from the UN and further articles that we need further action soon or we're in some dire consequences. What do you think are some ways that we could take on carbon and reduce it?
So the most critical issue first let me say climate change is an existential threat to the country and the globe. And we're already seeing large-scale weather impacts that can have huge negative consequences for our economy, for states, and for families. And the price of inaction goes up every single day. It is absolutely critical that we work to decarbonize our economy, meaning we move from high carbon intensive activities to low carbon intensive activities. So ultimately we need to move towards solar and renewables that have pretty much no carbon footprint. Now, there are several ways to get there. Obviously, one of the reasons why for many years people have embraced a carbon tax is that it basically provides incentives for people to make those decisions themselves. There are other ideas like moving to, doing dramatic investments in renewables and, sort of a kind of positive take on renewables. And I think that, massive investments, so CAP has also proposed about a year ago, $1 trillion infrastructure investment. A very large component of that is green jobs, retrofitting, moving to renewables, creating an infrastructure around renewables, electric cars, electric vehicles, etc. So that, I think really we agree with the scientists who believe that we're running out of time, that we only have decades, not several decades left to address this problem, and we believe urgently that we need to address it. And we've put ideas out both in moving directly to renewables through direct investment as well as a carbon tax, but this is an area of robust debate.
Okay, and so you guys have also actually released a healthcare policy idea. Obviously, Medicare for all, single-payer healthcare is one of the big talks around policy now, where Hillary Clinton had proposed a public option in her campaign, and obviously we know Senator Bernie Sanders had proposed single payer. And actually, I really liked the policy paper that you guys put out, the Medicare for all extra, I believe. I can't remember the exact title.
Yeah, Medicare extra for all. But yeah, you got it right.
So what I found interesting about that, and I want to make sure I'm understanding this, was that it would automatically enroll anyone that does not have insurance into Medicare while still maintaining a private market for insurance, and that would slowly move people into Medicare?
Yeah, so here's how it would work. Today, Medicare is two-thirds basically single-payer fee-for-service, one-third Medicare Advantage, which is private insurance. So the way our proposal works is it sort of makes Medicare better. It provides richer source of benefits. It's a richer option for people, makes that richer option available for people under 65. Everyone who doesn't have insurance today would get Medicare, get this Medicare program. People in the private sector, people who have employer-based coverage could choose to go into it or not. People in the like veterans would keep their current health care, but everyone else, Medicaid enrollees, CHIP enrollees, people in the individual market, people who don't have health insurance would go into the Medicare program. In the Medicare program, just like for seniors, they would have the option of doing Medicare, Medicare Advantage. Now, we would do it, we would structure the program so there's no benefit to being a Medicare Advantage. It's just you get to choose which one you want. So our plan maximizes choice for individuals. So if you have employer-based coverage today and you don't want to go into Medicare, you want to keep what you have, you can keep what you have. So we are different from single payer, which forces everyone to go from employer-based coverage into single payer. We don't do that. People can keep health care if they like it the way it is right now. But for everyone else, our plan ensures that there's coverage for every single American and ensures that people have options within the Medicare program. We expect most people to take up what most seniors do, which is a fee-for-service system, but we do not eliminate Medicare Advantage.
Interesting. One of the things that we've been seeing in the past, I want to say 10 years, is the rise of right-wing fascist politics, and it's not only here in the United States with the Republican Party.
Yes, absolutely.
But,
it is an international phenomenon.
What, in your opinion, do you think is driving this?
Well, that is a very good question. I think that there's a variety of forces. There are many internal to countries and many external. But so what I'd say is that there are forces external to countries. I do think Russia has a network of has a kind of rich, robust network to far right organizations and democracies around the globe to advance a kind of anti-democratic argument. And I think we'll see more connection. Obviously the Mueller probe is unmasking the direct connections between Russia and the NRA, for example. But I think you see things like that. But we also have to understand what's happening within countries. And my basic take is that many democracies are experiencing either demographic shift or their economies aren't producing good results for, the bottom 30 or 40%. So in the United States, there's a deep chasm between support for Trump between people with a college education and people without a college education, amongst whites in particular. But, my basic take is that we have a challenge, which is, I think, my own view is Donald Trump is racist and authoritarian. But there are people who are not racist and authoritarian who have supported him. And I think that they are basically, voting for kind of disruption of the political system. That's not everyone who supports him, but it is some group that supports him. And, I think we need to give them an alternative. And progressives need to have have an agenda that improves the lives of people who have not been benefiting from economic growth, not just for the last few years or the last 8 years, but really for most of the last 40 years. And that's a problem in the United States, and that's a problem in the UK, and that's a problem in parts of Europe, and we have to actually have a response so that there's a competition of ideas for those people. Because right now, my concern is that they hear a message that, essentially their lives will be better off if we bar immigrants and we, stop global trade. And my basic take is a bad answer will beat no answer, and progressives need a better answer. Those answers are not going to solve the problem, and they're already not. There's not like, wages have skyrocketed for people in the bottom half under Donald Trump. They have not. But we need actually a different, we need a better answer for those people. And that's why, we came up with a jobs guarantee for communities that have been left behind. So a big investment in jobs in places that have seen a lack of economic growth, and real targeting to ensure that people in those places that have been left behind by growth can have jobs with dignity.
It's interesting that you mentioned that wages aren't rising, but I was told that if we cut taxes for billionaires and millionaires, that they would spur the money to us and wages would rise. So that clearly didn't work, I guess.
That didn't work. The tax cuts didn't work. No part of Republican ideology has worked. Like the argument that you give companies massive tax cut and they pass it on to their employees is not proven out.
So you also talked about demographic change and immigration, and clearly that's been Trump's thing since he's existed, is demographics and racism. I don't think it's wrong to label him racist or call what he does racist. But my question is that we hear a lot of talk about immigration and how we need to fix our immigration system, but an issue I currently see is that no one necessarily talks about what our immigration system is and what's broken and what needs to be fixed. We just hear it's broken. Mm-hmm. And I guess my question is, how do we get that? How does that message get communicated to people so they understand? Because I think a lot of people hear, the dog whistles of that, they're taking your jobs and this and that, and then you hear, well, we just want a humane immigration system. But I don't think anyone really, I don't want to say anyone, but I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand how tough it is to naturally, legally immigrate into our country. So how do we get that message out on what our policies are and where we want to improve them?
Yeah, I think the problem in the world with Donald Trump as president is it's hard to have a kind of complicated, kind of nuanced conversation about this set of issues. And what I would say is that we have to identify what the actual problems are in the country and what the benefits and costs of immigration are. And the truth is that what actually differentiates the United States and our growth capacity over, some of our competitors is that we have a kind of rich immigration policy, or we have had a rich immigration policy that basically allows our country to grow because we have people who are desperate to become American citizens enter our country. The issues that are broken, in my view, in the immigration system are that we have a lot of people who are undocumented. We don't have a good vehicle we currently don't have a good vehicle for making people who were undocumented, citizens. So we need to fix that. I think we've invested a ton of money over the years in the border, and actually border crossings are sort of, really at an all-point low. But, or in several years low. But, but people should not be able to just come into the country illegally. So, I think there is actually a common sense, broad agreement on these issues, which is we need to have border security but we need a system for rationalizing an immigration system which has a lot of undocumented people here who have been contributing to our economy often for decades. We obviously have dreamers who are brought here for, not on their own volition but by their parents. And how do we treat them and how do we deal with them? And I think honestly that there's the sort of good news about immigration is that there is a broad consensus on these things. It's just polarized, in particular, in this moment, by a president who wants to demagogue the issue in order to rally his base. But said, previous Republican presidents have had broad, I didn't agree with everything George W. Bush did in immigration, but he obviously was a lot better on this issue than, for example, Donald Trump.
My last question to you is that we saw last night that Trump, with the government shut down, he decided to invite, the college football champions and serve them fast food. That seems a little bit weird to me. And what I guess kind of strikes me is that I remember when President Barack Obama was elected that there's a lot of racist characters around that saying that, he was going to be bringing KFC and watermelon and all this stuff. And it's weird, not necessarily weird, but it shows to me the striking racism that Donald Trump is offering these guys fast food, which is also kind of weird since he's supposed to be a billionaire. Why wouldn't he, spoil them? But whatever. So I guess, am I the only one that finds that odd?
There's such a long catalog of oddities and aberrations in this presidency that I have to say personally, like how he's dealing with the food for players who come to the White House is not I focus a little bit more on the assault on democracy itself, but I don't know. I guess my take on him is that Donald Trump says and does racist things on a regular basis, and you don't need to interpret his food choices to recognize that when he attacked the NFL, when he defends the people marching in Charlottesville, when he goes after Maxine Waters and Frederica Wilson and a whole range of people that, he has a history that, we've known for decades of being relatively racist. And so this is only part and parcel of a picture.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time again, Neera.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to once again thank Neera Tanden for taking time out of her busy schedule to talk to me about a variety of policies that CAP has produced. On our blog, I've put up a link to all these policies we discussed and Neera's Twitter account if you'd like to keep up with her thoughts. Thank you.